Hi, everybody. It's another Wednesday, and it's time for another Wednesday Word. We're going to be continuing today our series on spiritual practices or disciplines that I think will help us in this time to be more faithful in response to everything swirling around us. You may recall that in the first of our series, we looked at the virtue or the practice of humility, and last week we talked about empathy. Today, I wanted us to turn to one of the disciplines or practices that, frankly, I struggle with a lot. And so I hope you hear this coming not from a place of expertise, but from a place of growing and learning along with you. The practice or the discipline that I'm thinking about today is patience. I find myself to be a very impatient person a lot of the time, particularly with the folks that I love the most. I don't like to admit that, but I think it's true. I also think that patience is something I struggle with myself, having any sort of patience with myself and my own inability to do things on the schedule that I would like them to be done. So patience is a big struggle for me, and I suspect I'm not the only one, especially in this time when I think a lot of public health officials and other folks like that are urging patience in a way that we're not used to hearing. So why patience when I'm not great at it and when you may be tired of hearing people preaching patience? And how can I talk about it in a way that's any different from what you might be hearing from those public health officials? For me, from a sort of Christian perspective, I think about patience as being linked with some of the things that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. To be patient, I think, starts with acknowledging the reason for our impatience. And often that impatience comes from putting ourselves and our wants and our desires front and center, not stepping back to take a look at the broader picture and trying to determine where our place in it is. I often get impatient because I have this particular idea about how I want my day to go. And if it doesn't go that way, that impatience springs up in me. I find myself getting anxious about the fact that I can't complete that task in the time or in the manner that I think I should be able to. Or I get frustrated with somebody else because they're not allowing me to move on to the next task that's on my to-do list. In the sort of broader sense, when we're talking about patience, it is connected with this reality. We get impatient because we want things to happen on our time and on our schedule. And when they don't, impatience rears its head, and it can manifest itself in all kinds of other things: anger, frustration, and we can lash out at people simply because of our impatience. So I want to circle us back to the virtues of humility and empathy, those practices that I've talked about recently, because I think they get us closer to thinking about how patience can be something practical instead of just sort of a finger wagging, you need to wait for whatever it is that you want. When we take that step back, when we try to gain perspective on our lives and where they fit in with the lives of people around us and in our broader world, I think it's easier to cultivate that patience. Our inclination is always going to be to place ourselves at the center of our lives and to assume that our needs and our wants and our desires are more important than the needs and wants and desires of other people. This is the way Luther talks about sinfulness and pride and selfishness. That the sort of primary sin is that we end up turned in on ourselves and we make ourselves the center of the universe. And when that's your perspective on life, it's really easy to see how impatience can be a really powerful part of the way we look at and see the world. But if we can take that step back, if we can imagine a world in which someone else or some other thing is at the center instead of us, we can find the perspective we need to breathe, to relax, to find that the thing that is so pressing on our minds is perhaps not as pressing as it needs to be. That's not to say that there aren't things that are urgent. Sometimes things really do need to happen, and they need to happen now, and those aren't the sort of things I'm talking about. But you know what it is in your own life that triggers those feelings of frustration or anger or impatience. And when you feel those welling up in you, as you undoubtedly will, and I will too, because as I said, I struggle with this, give yourself a chance. If you're able, even physically take a step back from what it is that you're thinking and feeling. Think about what else is going on in the world around you. Think about what might be going on in the lives of the people that you might be impatient with at that moment. And see if that might not lessen the intensity of that impatience. All of us are wanting and seeking a return to something that looks like normal. And it's easy to be impatient when that doesn't come on the schedule that we'd like. But patience is a virtue. My mom used to say it to me all the time. And I think it's true now more than ever. I invite you this week to join me in focusing on patience and trying to take that step back, gain that perspective, and realize that patience can help us to be better grounded in this unprecedented time. As you seek to do that, I invite you to receive this blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord's face shine on you with grace and mercy. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you his peace. Amen. See you next week.